Let's get started.
I'm Dwight Campbell, and I am the Business Development Marketing Representative for Pioneer Title in the Lake Pleasant office.
So let's talk a little bit about title insurance. Can you go and describe exactly what title insurance is?
It protects buyers and lenders in a purchase transaction. It protects them from financial loss and defects within title. In addition to that, the great reason why you should have title insurance and should always close with a title company is, number one, it provides you, the owner, the right to possess, occupy, and enjoy your home, along with the right to sell it. Once you close escrow with a title company, you're going to have title, you're going to be assured to have title ownership of that property. Title insurance will protect against defects in title, such as unrecorded easements, forgeries, any undisclosed contract issues, losses due to unknown encumbrances, liens, judgments, or security instruments that may be filed against the property, title claims to the property, fraud, forgery, or incompetence on a lender's part, or, for example, even title's part if they make a mistake. Rarely happens, but it can happen. Lack of legal ingress and egress to your property. How would you like to come home someday and not have access to your driveway? Somebody's got it all blocked up and says, I own this, and you can't come across it. Title, if you have a title insurance policy, you can go back to that title insurance company and actually file a claim. Mm-hmm. This is what's happening. My neighbor says I can't get across into my home.
It happens.
Yep. For the last 10 years, I've been driving across. So title insurance is a must.
I agree. What type of insurance is needed for the average home buyer?
Generally speaking, a Alta home loan policy should be the buyer's choice. And I would not recommend any other, unless of course you're buying land in a purchase transaction. You will not want an Alta policy, but an Alta home policy is exactly what you want to get. It provides the greatest protection available to the homeowner.
Okay. Yes, I totally agree with you on that. What are the different policies available, and can you describe briefly the difference between each policy?
Sure. There are 4 basic types of policies, and they follow in suit. So I'm going to start with the policy that is probably known as the less coverage, and then work our way to the homeowner's policy. Okay. Provides the greatest amount of policy insurance. Okay. But you start with a standard covered policy. If someone else owns a recorded interest in your title, this policy will transfer that ownership to the current buyer. Documents, if they're not properly signed, this policy will cover that as well. It covers against forgery, fraud, duress, impersonation, incapacity. Also covers what we referred to a moment ago, lack of ingress and egress to the property as well. That is your basic policy, your standard policy. Then you go into the extended coverage policy. And the extended coverage policy includes everything in the standard policy, as well as coverage for mechanics liens, protection prior to the policy date. So for example, if you're building on a piece of land and somebody went out and did a survey, the previous owner had a survey done, but never paid the individual for that policy, for the survey itself, then we protect against that. Title will protect against that, so that lien does not show up on title. Even though the work was not paid for, they'll have to go to the previous owner to get paid or compensated for the survey. It covers unrecorded liens by an HOA. It will cover someone else that has an easement on your property that you were unaware of. So the standard coverage and the extended coverage will cover those particular items. When you go to an Alta residential policy, that is your third policy that you have the option to acquire. And that includes obviously the standard coverage, the extended coverage, and then additional forced removal of residential structures because they extend onto somebody else's parcel or easement or property line. The Alta residential automatically provides an inflation coverage up to 150% as well. So if your policy initially was 100,000, the breach of the property line with a structure on it, say the damage is 150,000, then that inflation coverage is going to cover for that. And then you have your Alta homeowners policy, which would be your standard policy for somebody purchasing and acquiring a residential property in Arizona. Alta home policy covers the standard, the extended, and the residential. It covers building permits, zoning violations by prior owners. It will cover post-policy encroachments, post-policy forgeries, living trust coverage. A lot of homeowners like to place their homes in trust. So with that coverage, that provides for any issues with the trust. Forced removal of existing structures, boundaries, walls, fences due to encroachments as well. That is the policy you want to set your client up with when you're in a purchase transaction.
Yeah, it's just, it covers everything. It's the greatest coverage available to a homeowner.
Absolutely. And the beauty of it is, much like a car insurance, you pay that on a monthly basis. This policy insurance is paid once, and it is for life that you own that property.
Yes. And I think a lot of people, they don't even realize that they have this policy until something comes up and then they refer back to it. So a lot of homeowners are just always unaware that there's this coverage and there's this policy out there because they purchased it at the beginning when they bought the home. So super important to have title insurance in case in the event that something happens down the road while you are the owner of that property.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And title insurance provides that smooth, easy transition from the seller to the buyer.
Yes. Yes. And we're going to talk about that next, actually, the purpose of an escrow company, because even though title and escrow are almost one and the same, well, they are one and the same, there is a difference. So can you tell us a little bit the purpose of an escrow company?
Absolutely. Purpose of an escrow company is the duty to act as a neutral third party in a purchase transaction. Although we do refinance transactions as well, specifically for a purchase transaction, we act as the third party, neutral third party. So we abide by the contract rules. However, the agents, the selling agent, as well as the buyer's agent, listing agent and the buyer's agent, however they write that contract, the title company will fulfill the promises of that contract and how it is written. Super important when there is an addendum to a contract to provide that to escrow so we know how to finish the transaction. We hold all the documents for the buyer and the seller. Money is required by the purchase contract. We hold that money for them as well. We abide by the contract. If the contract does fall out of escrow, we follow the rules of the contract in providing the escrow money back to the buyer, or do we send it to the seller, depending on how that contract is written. Until all the terms and conditions in that contract are fulfilled, we make sure that they've been met before we close escrow.
Yes, you guys are lifesavers and do a lot of the background work for an agent that we don't really have to worry about. For example, collection of the earnest deposit. You guys are
Absolutely.
the ones that will take care of that and hold that, um, you know, for closing. So a lot of homeowners, they don't understand the process, the buying process, and where escrow comes into play. So that's another great reason why an escrow company is so important to have, is because, like you said, they're that third party, neutral party between
Yep,
the buyer and the seller.
absolutely.
Um, Now, as far as the title and escrow fees go, can you break down who exactly pays for what?
Sure. I'll start with the seller. The owner's title insurance policy, which grants them ownership of the property once they successfully close escrow. They will pay for the policy. Real estate commissions, the seller will pay for half of the escrow fee. And I'll preface this fees as well on behalf of the seller as well as the buyer, depending on how that contract is negotiated. And with the tight inventory levels that we're seeing today, you need a great agent like Angie Diaz on your side to write the best possible contract. And she knows, as a real estate expert, she knows exactly how to successfully get you into a home with the best written contract. So the fees that I'm talking about, sometimes those will be changed. If they're seller directed to pay, sometimes it'll be buyer directed to pay. If that can get you into the appropriate home, any loan charges specified in the contract, if there is seller contributions to closing costs, then the seller would be responsible for that. Payoff of existing liens, loans, encumbrances of record will also be paid. Um, Termite inspection, home warranty, recording charges to clear all documents of record, the seller is responsible for. Prorated property taxes and delinquent taxes, the seller would be responsible for those as well. Unpaid HOA dues, assessments that have not been paid,
Mhm.
and HOA transfer fee disclosure statements would also be paid. If a home has a septic tank and there will be an inspection done on that septic tank, but if there are repairs to be done to that, then the seller is responsible for those as well. Unless, of course, Angie writes into the contract that the buyer's willing to pay those. And of course, Angie's not going to have the buyer pay more if she represents the buyer, pay more than they need to pay. And on the seller side, sometimes those repairs can be paid by the buyer as well.
Right. It's all part of the negotiations. That's my
Ab-
job.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yes, and I forgot to point out that, as well as just collecting the title and the escrow fees. Title does so much more. The escrow company does so much more for the transaction. They actually take care of getting the seller's liens paid and making sure that everything is cleared before closing. So that's important as well. And that's an important part of title and escrow, because that's, again, you know, behind the scenes, things that sellers and buyers don't even realize is going on. Title and escrow takes care of all that.
And you bring up a great point. And we work really hard behind the scenes to make sure those liens are recorded. And if there's a problem, we're going to come to the agent right away and to the buyer or the seller, depending on who you represent. And we're going to discuss what that issue is. And we want to get that addressed sooner rather than later. So with minimum impact to your buyer or your seller, we want to make sure that we're working hard for you. And assured we are on the backside. We may be quiet, but once
Mhm.
we cross or we're ready to go forward, we come across a problem or we're ready to move forward with the close of escrow, we're going to let you know.
Yes, yes. And then the other thing I wanted to touch on too, that is just equally as important is you guys actually on the day of closing, you're handling the wire from, the buyer's lender. You're actually also in charge of making sure that that transaction, the documents get recorded. That's the final piece and what everybody is waiting for on closing day. So that is a very important process in the home buying and selling process that I, wanted to touch on again.
Absolutely. And we want to make title as seamless and smooth and transparent to your client as well as you. So once a contract offer is accepted between the buyer and the seller, we make arrangements to pick up the earnest money check, and then we start right away. We open escrow. We request from the title plant any liens or encumbrances on that property. If there's HOAs, if there's IRS tax liens, that rarely happens, but at times it does. So that we can get to you as quickly as possible if we have not so great news, and maybe the seller didn't know they had an IRS tax lien on their
Mhm. Right.
or a state tax lien, to let you know before your client spends a lot of money on appraisal as well as title commitment. Well, not title commitment, I apologize, appraisal as well as inspection um, for your client. Because if we find that out later, they've shelled out expense for the appraisal, they've shelled out expense for the inspection as well. So we want to try and head that off as quickly as possible.
Yeah, you're right. That's definitely something that a lot of buyers and sellers don't even think about, that a bankruptcy, a tax lien, an HOA lien could pop up and potentially jeopardize the deal if not taken
Absolutely.
care of. So again, the title and escrow companies, their purpose and their job is to make sure that title being transferred is free and clear for the new homeowner.
So on the buyer's side, they'll be responsible for the lender title insurance policy premium, half of the escrow fee, unless of course it's written differently in the contract. Uh, any new lender charges that the buyer is responsible for, generally there's a 1 point origination fee. Not all lenders charge that, but there are. Any buy-up fees, where if somebody's trying to reduce their rate, they may have a buy-up fee as well that they have to pay to the lender. Recording charges for all documents in the purchase of the buyer. Interest on new loans from the date of the loan funding. So there may be 30 days or less interest that is accumulated at close of escrow as well. Hazard insurance premium for the first year. And if there's any impounds to that, then they'll be prorated as well.
Mhm.
Oftentimes on impounds, the lender will require 2 or 3 reserve. And so those have to be placed in there as well. Property tax impounds per the lender, advanced HOA management payments. So if the HOA requires reserve in their HOA 2 or 3 months, then that needs to be put in as well. Preservation fees, recreation fees, Sun City's a big one for that. $3,500 is the current fee in Sun City. So, and any septic inspection fees, the buyer is responsible for, unless, of course, you, on behalf of your clients, decide to write a really strong offer that's going to take some of the load off of the buyer's back and put it onto the seller, then you're going to go ahead and do that as well.
Yeah, exactly. One thing that I want to touch on that I didn't bring to you previously was what we're seeing a lot here in Arizona are solar. I know on the title end, you have UCCs that get recorded. That again is something that title takes care of on their end to make sure that that transfer in the solar lease or loan goes smooth to the next homeowner. So just wanted to touch up on that as well. That's another big item in title and escrow, and we're seeing it more and more here in Arizona.
And I'm going to tell you, Angie, you do a great job of recognizing those and placing them in your contract. And then we know about it on the title side. So we're looking for that UCC when you write a contract offer for your clients. And it's really important to understand the value of what solar brings to the purchase or the listing. On the listing side, on the selling side, it is super, super important to have an agent that is aware of how solar works.
Mhm.
I know you know how solar works because I have seen as a licensed real estate agent myself, my license is inactive, but I have seen clients that didn't understand how solar worked.
Yeah.
And that guidance from the real estate agent is huge.
Yes, and I agree because that could be a deal breaker for
It can't,
a lot of buyers, and you have to know, the agent has to know all the protocols that need to be taken when there are solar panels on a home. And if an agent doesn't know that, then that's going to, again, it affects the buyer going forward if they were to end up purchasing that home because now they have solar panels. There's a payment that possibly needs to be made to the solar panels every month. How much are their electricity bills going to be? So those are all things that, and it's us agents that has to deal with. But on the back end, when there are solar panels on a home, title and escrow are in the back, taking care of
addressing.
things that need to be addressed prior to closing. So,
Absolutely.
all right. Well, Dwight, thank you so much. Thank you for taking your time today to talk to me and to my subscribers about title, the importance of title and escrow insurance and an escrow company. So thank you again. And if there's anything else that you want to add before we sign off here, feel free to go ahead and throw it in there.
We would love your business. I'm an Arizona native. I love living here in Arizona. Pioneer Title Agency has been here since 1985, is a home-owned organization. The president lives in Sierra Vista. We have 80 offices throughout.
That. Huh.
Have 80 offices throughout the state of Arizona, 80 plus, and 29 offices located here in Maricopa County. We can help you on a purchase transaction or a sale transaction anywhere within the state of Arizona at our Lake Pleasant office.
That's awesome. Thank you again, Dwight. As always, you're always so helpful and resourceful, and I really appreciate it. Thank you again for coming on.
You are welcome. Angie, thank you. I appreciate it.
Thanks. All right. Have a good day.
You too. Take
Bye-bye.
care.